Hey guys, it's Sky. So, this is not a part of What's So Funny and Food for Thought. This is a kind of a recap of what happened on the mental ward on Sunday. And no, it's nothing bad. It's actually a reflection because you guys have seen me on the mental ward a couple of times now. And either I've been a special guest, I have been a co-host, or just there to chill. But this is last time around when we had a special guest, Liz, and I was a co-host. This time around was something very special, at least to me. And I wanted to do kind of a deeper dive into why that was so special to me. It didn't seem like that on camera. Because of course for me, when I get thrown in front of the camera, whether it's on my own for Food for Thought, for What's So Funny, and or just in general when I'm on the stage being a comedian, there's a different, I guess if you will, personality that comes out. But for this video, this is a recap of what was going through my head at the time of the mental ward, which is a completely different, headspace for me, because it's not my show, it's not my time on the stage. It's more about, hey, I'm chilling, I'm on your stage, and I am going with the flow for you. So here's what that was like. So first off, I was co-hosting with Jimmy because Jimmy Ward III was unavailable at the time, which I was more than happy to oblige. For me, this last time around with Liz was very reflecting and educational. But why? We've had lots of comedians, whether they were friends, whether they were other comedians that I just happened to bump into and or worked with. Why was this one so important that I felt the need to have to reach out and be like, hey, this was something different to me? Well, this is why it was something different to me. I have learned a lot about stories, about comedians and how they've started, what changes them, what it means to them to be a comedian. And for a lot of that time, it either resonates with me, I'm like, that's cool, that's awesome, keep going. But for some reason, this one resonated to my heart. This one pulled at my strings a lot. And I feel like I had to hold back a lot. I had to hold back a lot of emotion. I had to hold back quite a bit of stuff just so it wouldn't show on camera. And that, for me, was the hardest part. And like I said, we're gonna get into why. There was a lot going in my head when everything kept coming out. And actually behind the scenes, it was a lot more of a conversation, which was beautiful. Obviously, I'm not getting into that because that was a lot more personal. But I'm just saying behind the scenes, it was beautiful. But what can I share with you guys? So we learned about the story of Liz and how she handles her everyday life. Everybody handles everyday life differently. But Liz shared, and if you want to watch the Mental Ward podcast last Sunday, it's on YouTube now. It's on Spotify. Liz shared how they have a memory problem. And how I shared it's just like 50 First Dates. Or it's like Groundhog Day. Where you repeat the same day every day. That's kind of what it reminded me of. That was kind of the humorous side of me. But for real though, how would you feel if every day you couldn't make new memories? A human goes off of life based on new memories. Remembering things every day. But me putting myself in Liz's shoes, where if I couldn't form new memories, then what do you have? And that really pulled at my heartstrings because it was like, how on earth do you stay so strong? How? And the other conversations we had together off camera were just hard to listen to. And then how she keeps her comedy going, how she's able to tell her story. If you were there at the show last Sunday, you got to hear some of her comedy. But how it affected me personally was the mental health side and learning about just things from the mental health perspective, you know, invisible disabilities and how we're treated. And I say we because I have an invisible disability. Mental health awareness is so important. And for me, it was so hard to listen to, but it was also very hard to know that this is her everyday, not being able to form new memories. And it really made me think as a person, what if? But that's her life. And it really made you think. And I was so glad that she could share that with us and with the 2,000 something people that, or 3,000 something people that watch the Mental Ward. And so then it made me think about my time with comedy and TikTok, because I've been in front of the camera for a long time, and the difference is to share of how I learned my information. So how I learned about Liz and about mental health and how your struggles. Well, how did I learn about other struggles though? How did I learn stories of other people? Well, how different is it learning through comedy versus learning from TikTok, learning from YouTube? Well, all three of them have something in common. You learn. But they all have something very differently in common. Well, my comparison, YouTube from TikTok, if you have like a chart, from TikTok, you live stream a lot. It's being in front of a camera. You have all the talking points, you know, you have people commenting and whatnot, or if you're going live and you have boxes and you're talking to people, that's great. But I also feel like you can make personal videos as well. Great. But it's also, if you will, it's very sheltered, if that makes sense. Very, you can't, you have to tiptoe around what you want to say. And there's a word I'm trying to think of, I still can't think of it. I wrote this down. I wrote notes down so I remember stuff. You have to tiptoe around TikTok. You can't say certain phrases. You can't say certain actions and words. You're very limited on what you're allowed to say and what you're allowed to talk about and what you're allowed to mention, but that's also because it's run by a different country. So I understand. Sheltered's not the word I'm thinking of, but you're very limited on what you're allowed to speak of. And I feel like that's not fair. And then also, but it is a great way to meet people. I met some really good people, but also at the same time, you can get hurt just the same. The difference between YouTube, though, is, again, you can make personal interactions that aren't there. You can't make you can make personal interactions on YouTube, like put videos out like I do for a podcast or whatever you want to call it, but you aren't really there in the moment like you are with TikTok. You're there in the moment, you know? YouTube, you can't really be there in the moment. But all three in common, you're learning something. No matter what, all three, TikTok, YouTube, and comedy, you're always learning something. And that's what I love. And that's something that I love personally, is no matter what, I am always learning something. That's what I want to keep doing, is learning something out of all three. I don't do TikTok anymore because I learned a lot from doing TikTok, but I learned. Now, the things that I learned from the Mental Ward podcast, specifically with the one that I did with Liz also, is understanding the empowerment of women and how, in the end, we really do need to stick with each other. Now, that is a big statement, and let me break that down for you. First off, again, I don't identify as a woman, and I have that live on here. Great. I don't identify as a woman. I identify as bigender, which means I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I've never identified, well, I've not never identified as a woman. I've never considered myself a woman. The government might think I'm a woman. Body parts might think I'm a woman, but me personally, I'm bigender, which basically means I have a masculine side, I have a feminine side. For me as a whole, I don't identify as either or. So when people call me and they go, sir or ma'am, I'll answer to either or. For me as a whole, I am not neither or. So that is why my pronouns are they or them. Now somebody else who's bigender might define themselves differently as a bigender individual. That's fine. That's just my definition of it. So with that being said, I am not against the ability of women being empowering in some way, shape, or form. In fact, I am so for women being empowering. Because again, women need to be empowering. That is important. I am very for women being empowering. I can't express how much I am for that. We need people like Liz, especially with Liz being the way Liz is. Not in a bad way, but if you can't form new memories, how do you form relationships? How do you form friendships? How do you do comedy, for Christ's sakes? How do you do all that and still find a way to be empowering towards people, towards women? And Liz finds a way. And that's exactly why we need women like Liz. Because without people like Liz, we can't stand together as a whole human race to stay together. That's what's empowering to me. Is even through all Liz's struggles, Liz finds a way to be empowering. But that is what I think is important. And as I've said before, no matter what you identify as in terms of, womanhood, if that makes sense, I think you should still find a way of being empowering, whether it's big or small. And in my case, I don't identify as a woman or a man, but I still want women to find a way to be empowering. I still want you to be able to use your voice and say if something is not right or you think something's not fair. Open your mouth. Share your feelings. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way it's going to get out there. And I think that's very important. So, well, thank you guys for sharing this moment with me. I very much appreciate it. And as always, that is my feeling on the last mental ward. And this was an important video for me to share out loud. So, thank you. Talk to you guys all later and see you at the next comedy show. Bye.